What a trip! This was so fun! So awesome! Can you believe the sunbeam? Perfect, couldn't have been better. We found this amazing lavender field. Look at this mountain. Can you believe this? There's so much beauty in a picture of a flower. Check this out, like absolutely so incredibly epic. You can't give up. If you have your heart set on something, you need to keep pursuing it. Woo! Unbelievable. We made it. It's almost game time, can't wait.
Can you believe this place? It's like fall wonderland.
The trip is over, but wow.
Wow.
Like, wow.
It was amazing.
Welcome to the Photography Academy Summit 2021, where you will create the best photo of your life in just 5 days. Your host for this summit is the founder of Photography Academy, author of the Photo Cookbook, creator of the Photography Transformation 4-Step System, and winner of the International Nature Photographer of the Year Award from Master Photographers International. Introducing your host, Tim Shields.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. You know, when I see that intro video, those are all clips from actual legitimate videos that were shot in the field, most of them filmed by Leah, who was with me. And really, it's a reflection of what landscape and outdoor photography really means. It's so much more than just taking pictures. It's part of the adventure of your life. And when you kind of get bitten by that bug and you see that vision and you recognize that that process of going out into no man's land, like places you've never been before, even if it's your backyard or it's the local park, the state park, or it's somewhere far away, it is the adventure of your life, and you're documenting it, and you have a mission and a goal while you're there to create like the best art you've ever created. You get back home, you continue with that adventure by developing your photo into this piece of fine art that you're just going to love. That is why I love landscape photography so much. It's such a worthy venture, and it is like the most awesome use of your time. And you are having literally the adventure of your life. So we have an awesome program for you today. Let's take a look at what the schedule is. We are going to be watching the interview with Hobby Sands, who is an award-winning, amazing landscape photographer. I'm going to be doing a live photo editing tutorial in front of you where I'll take one of my landscape photos and edit it in real time and show you exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm going to give you my camera settings one-pager. And this is going to be something that will help you to not make mistakes with your camera settings anymore. And I've got more prize giveaways. We're going to be giving away that backpack over on the right, and we're going to give away an SD card and the mini tripod. But yeah, yesterday we gave away that professional full-size tripod. We've given away the backpack on the left. So it's going to be great. And also, we're going to hold this draw at the end, and I'm definitely trying today to stay within 1 hour, start to finish. I'm doing my absolute best. I know we went too long yesterday, and I'm sorry about that. And today will be different. So treat this summit like it is an opportunity. You are getting amazing value out of 5 days of free training. But even though it's free, I'm asking you to show up every day, take notes, complete the challenge tasks. There's really a reason why we're holding this summit. And I've given away a lot of content already. And if you embrace the training that has already been given, you are definitely going to be able to create for yourself some absolutely beautiful photos. So please comment in the chat. Are you committing to going all in on yourself? Like by at least just investing this time by showing up every day for just 5 short days. We only have 1 more day to go, and then the summit is over, and the summit replay videos are going to be taken offline, sadly. Big thank you to yesterday's audience. We had about 1,800 people who watched the summit live yesterday. Thousands more watched the replay videos yesterday afternoon and evening. We had over 15,000 comments across Facebook and YouTube during the actual broadcast. and many, many, many thousands more after that. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube right now, we have a YouTube channel with over 100 adventure photography videos like those ones that you saw in the very beginning. And so if you'd like to see more adventure photography, then click that little red subscribe button down in the bottom right corner and the little bell beside it so that you won't miss any notifications. So on day one of this 5-day challenge, I asked you to make a declaration, and that was, what do you want? Because if you don't know what you want, you're certainly not going to get anywhere. And where do you want to go with your photography? On day two, our goal was to help you develop your own signature style. And this is connected with finding your own voice through your photography. And with what you now know about the specific genres and the styles of photography, I want you to once again look at the photos that our presenters have taken that have been in this 5-day summit and ask yourself, what is the individual style or genre that that photographer is showcasing? What is the voice of that photographer? And what voice would I like to have for myself? So that was the day 2 challenge. Day 3 challenge was to find one photo location near you that you will go to in the next month, and to make a declaration, make a plan, and actually commit to going to that place by putting a chat in the comments, putting a comment in the chat, and making a statement. I'm going to go here at this time. So as a result of yesterday's challenge, we had so many comments, and I want to read 3 of them. So the first one, which I'm assuming is Maggie, I'm going to Fort Lauderdale the end of June and want to create a photograph of the sunset sunrise on the beach. From Chip Thomas, declaration, I am going to create this photo at Hanging Lake in June. And from Louis Edwards, I am going to find Peter Lick's reflections site and take that picture pre-fall colors. Let's talk about this just for a second here, because what Louis is doing is exactly what I train people to do. So let's take a look at that photo he just mentioned. This is a photo taken by Peter Lick that he sold for $1 million. And Peter only made one copy of this photo, and the name of the photo, he called it One. And at the time Peter posted this photo, he posted online that this was the best photo he had ever taken. And he also posted that he had taken this photo as a reflection. It's a reflection off the water from a river in New Hampshire. So last week I was chatting with Louis Edwards, whose comment I just read to you. He is a student in my coaching program. And when I realized that Louis lives in New Hampshire, I challenged him and I said, hey, why don't you start researching and planning for a trip to that same river in your home state this fall to see if you can also capture the fall colors as a reflection in the same way that Peter Lick did. So you see, Peter Lick is like the best of the best. So why not model the success that Peter Lick has already attained? And this is how you get better, faster. You look at the pictures that you like the most and you reverse engineer them. You deconstruct them. And then you start researching and planning so that you can get your own version of that photo and have a goal so that your version of that photo will be even better than the original that you saw. So we're going to hear from Hobby Sans in a minute. But before we do, I want to take a look at a couple of photos where the photographer is using a similar editing style to Hobby Sans. Now, these 2 photos were taken by Julian Grundon. He's a French photographer with 45,000 followers on Instagram. And the photo on the left is an example of what is known as reoccurring patterns, which I'm going to talk about more today. It's a very important concept in compositions. In the photo of the right, we have a composition style that I've been talking about all week, which is the one thing, right? We have one clear main subject on the photo on the right. So look at that difference. On the left, reoccurring patterns. We don't have the one thing. Over on the right, it's the one thing. What I want you to look at is the one on the right. Look how the main subject is so much brighter than the surrounding mountains. So the main subject is that pyramid-shaped mountain, and the mountains on the right and the left are dark. And even more than that, look at how the mountain way over on the left, like the extreme left side, it's actually blurry, like it's not sharp. But the main subject mountain is sharp. And this is all intentional edits that were done in post-processing with one goal, right? So this Julian Grondin, he had one goal when he started to process this photo. And the goal was to get the viewer to only look at the one main subject and to minimize by darkening or blurring the other parts of the photo. So this photo was taken by Hengi Kontoro, and he has chosen an overall genre of creating powerful black and white images. And if you look at his Instagram account, which has 45,000 followers, so he's very popular, you'll see that every one of his photos has this same similar theme, like dramatic, moody black and whites. And all his photos are compositions using one simple thing. And if you look at the foreground, I can tell so much about a photo by looking at the foreground and the background and again, reverse engineering the photo. So there's nothing here. There's nothing in the foreground aside from a shadow. There's nothing in the background. It's very intentional. And that lack of distractions is what makes this photo actually so good. There's only one thing to look at. And this is such an example of simplicity in a composition. Just one more. Let's look at Max Rive. He is insanely popular on Instagram. He has 1.8 million followers. And as a landscape photographer, that's like the best of the best on Instagram. So his photos all use that same dark and moody editing style that Hobby Sans uses. And you look how dark the clouds are in the top right of the photo. I can almost guarantee you that they were not that dark when Max took this picture. But his post-processing, his editing style means that he would have darkened that area of the sky intentionally. Also, look at the ground on the bottom right and the bottom left. It's much darker than the ground that is behind the pond. Look at the ground behind the pond. It's almost white. And compared to the bottom right and the bottom left, the ground on the pond, behind the pond, is much brighter than the foreground. Okay, it didn't look like that when he took the photo. It's all intentional. And he would have created these differences using the paintbrush, which I showed you yesterday, and I'm going to show you much more of today. He would have brushed in darkness over the foreground, and he would have brushed in brightness over the white background. And he did this so that you would look more at the back of the photo and not the front of the photo. Remember that principle. The eye is always attracted to the brightest parts of the photo. So one last one, and this is the last one from Max Rive. And this could look like one of the coastlines almost anywhere. It could even look like the Oregon coast, but I really don't think that it is. But notice the alternating streaks of brightness and darkness. And the photo on the left goes from brights to darks, from brights to darks. It's like layer upon layer upon layer. And once again, this would have been intentionally created using the paintbrush. So now that we've looked at those similar styles, it is definitely time to hear from our presenter, Hobby Sans. He is an incredible landscape photographer. I met him in France at the Lavender Fields in 2019. It was such an honor to meet him. And we are going to hear from him now. He inspires me to take better and better photographs. You know, we've been talking about his dreamy and kind of cinematic landscapes all week. And today we are going to hear from him. So without any further ado, let's hear from Hobby Sans, originally from Spain. And I interviewed him in Thailand over the internet just last week. Welcome to the Photography Academy Summit. And with me now is the award-winning landscape photographer, originally from Spain and coming to us from Thailand right now on a live interview. Welcome to Hobby Sans. He has an Instagram following of 21,000 people on his account, which is all his landscape photography. You can see his work at hobbysansphotography.com. And Hobby, you have been all over the world with your photography. Where has landscape photography taken you in the world?
Well, first of all, hello to everyone. It's a pleasure to me to do this interview with you, Tim. And photography became my passion 4 years ago thanks to a trip I achieved to Iceland with my girlfriend. We was going there for holidays. I was not a photographer. I didn't have even the camera. On the trip there, we decided to, we was thinking we are going to one of the most beautiful countries in the world and we have no photographic camera. We are going to do all the photos with our phone. So on that trip, actually in Reykjavik, I bought my first camera, the one I still using right now, actually.
4 years ago, you bought your first camera. Okay,
yes.
Keep going.
And then after that trip, photography became my passion. That trip, the country blew my mind, actually, the nature and the landscape. After that, I spent almost all my days and hours studying photography on film, on computers, watching tutorials. I was one of your first members in your group in Facebook. You remember that?
I do.
And
Absolutely.
I follow you. I learned with you a lot at the beginning. And then, after a few years, I keep going on my way and try to find my style. And the photography actually is bring me to many places in the world than I didn't expect before. Thanks to photography, I travel a lot. I discover so many places, incredible, amazing mountains, seascape. And I always have the passion to travel, but now it's more and more thanks to the photography.
You were one of the founding members of the Photography Academy Facebook group, and we met in the lavender fields of France near the town of Valençol in 2019, and you got some incredible photos while you were standing beside me of that stone house with the sun setting behind it. The most incredible experience. So you mentioned your own unique style. Tell me about your unique style and why is it important to have your own unique style?
It's very difficult, and I think I still learning day by day. I think the art, but I really get inspired by dreamy looks, fantasy movies or books like the Lord of the Rings, for example. I try to achieve on my image that dreamy and fantasy look always.
A dreamy and fantasy look is what you've specialized in. I find this so interesting. You're saying that your landscape photography is inspired by movies that you even see, including Lord of the Rings. So do you, when you're out in a location, maybe you're in Iceland, so are you thinking back to the movies that you've seen and trying to recreate some of those looks?
I try. And actually, when I am in the field and I take the picture, I already start to think how it's going to look later.
You have been doing landscape photography for just over 4 years. You started in 2017. So what would your advice be to someone who is just starting out? They're looking at your images right now and they're saying, wow, I really wish I could take images just like that. Can I do it? Do I have what it takes? What would your advice be to someone who is a beginner?
I think it's just to work and work and work. Don't be afraid to fail, to make errors. Just go out, take a lot of pictures day by day, come back home, try to learn. I normally, not now, but at the beginning, I normally spend at least every day before go to sleep, like 1-2 hours watching videos, watching tutorials, reading articles, looking the work of other artists and try and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because from the mistakes you're learning.
Yeah. When you make mistakes, you are learning, and you're going to make the mistakes in landscape photography, but that's exactly how we learn. So thank you so much, Javi. It has been an honor to speak with you. I'm looking at your Instagram account. You can follow Javi at Javi Sans on Instagram. He has 21,000 followers and his photos are amazing. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tim. And thank you so much for all of you for listening to me. I'm looking forward to see you again, Tim.
Okay, so Javi definitely inspires me. And such a key takeaway, there are two things. Number one, he picked up a camera for the first time 4 years ago during a holiday to Iceland. 4 years ago, he picked up a camera for the first time. That's when he bought it. And as I recall, it was a Sony mirrorless. I think it was a Sony a6500. And number two was his commitment to learning, that he's constantly learning. Did you hear what he said? He spends time every night watching videos and just learning more and more about his photography. So would you like to reverse engineer one of Hobby's photos right now, like deconstruct it and analyze it? I love doing this because this is how you can kind of figure out how the artist edited the photo and did what they did, and maybe what their thought process was. And then you can take those learning points and apply it to your own photography. So let's go full screen here and reverse engineer this photo to see how he got the dramatic look. So number one is that he would have most likely used a global adjustment to just plain and simple make the whole image darker. But that on its own is not enough. So he used the landscape photographer's secret weapon. He used the brush in Lightroom. So look at those clouds at the top. You see how dark some of those clouds are? There's no way they would have looked that dark naturally. So how did he get that look? He would have brushed over the dark clouds and reduced the brightness on those clouds, which makes them look dark. And then you see the right side of the sky under the dark clouds, like this area right in here. And there's kind of a bit of a tint look to it and maybe a little bit of a warmer look. So he would have brushed over this area, maybe brushed over here too, and just added a little bit of tint to that brush to give it a slightly different color. So now look what we have going on in the sky. We have cool tones here, almost blue cool tones, and then we have warm tones there. And all you need to do to get that look is to brush in some warm tones and a bit of tint here. And maybe he even brushed in some cool tones underneath. And then let's take a look at the walkway. And you notice how the walkway climbs up the hill here. And you can clearly see it climbing up the hill. But look at the rocks on the left. It's a lot darker. The rocks on the right are a lot darker, but this walkway is a lot brighter. So your eye goes to it. This is a leading line, known as a leading line in compositions. But how is it we're seeing this leading line so clearly way up here when this whole big rock island is actually pretty dark? Well, he brushed over the walkway and just slightly painted in some light there. Same thing with this railing. The railing on the right and the railing on the left, they've just been brushed over and slightly brightened up. But then the walkway on the bottom, especially on the foreground and the walls here, kind of dark. So Hobby kind of sat back and he looked at this and he said, I want the viewer to look at this leading line. So that means I'm going to minimize the bottom right. I'm going to minimize the bottom left by just painting in a little bit of darkness. And what an amazing final result. I love it. It looks like it's straight out of a movie. So I just bumped my mouse. And the final takeaway is that when you reverse engineer a photo, you can learn from the techniques that were used by the original artist, and then you can use them yourself. So let's look at this one as well from Hobby Sans. And this is a balance and symmetry type of composition, like we have an equal amount of visual weight on the right compared with the visual weight on the left. And that's a balance and symmetry composition. We have a bright valley bottom. How did that valley bottom get so bright? Because that's what's attracting my eye. Well, Hobby would have painted in just a little bit of light on the valley bottom. And look at the left side, it's really dark. So he could have painted in just a bit of darkness on the right and painted in some darkness over here on the right. And finally, the one thing I want you to notice is this little waterfall. So the waterfall, as you notice, it's kind of bright. And so he wanted us to look at that. He wanted us to notice it. So the grand sum, like the takeaway here, is that Hobby wanted us to notice the middle of the image. And he wanted to take away the emphasis on the right and the left, because that is what was kind of providing a little bit of clutter and noise in the image. Last one from Hobby, and what an awesome photo, like wow. So here's the big takeaway here. He's got this really cool curvy leading line, and curved leading lines are always the best, but you notice that even though we're in a dark valley bottom here and it's totally in shade, this water is fairly bright and it just catches your eye immediately. So how easy would it be to take your paintbrush and just paint over the curvy river and then brighten up the river just a little bit And then do the opposite for all the ground that is surrounding it. Paint in some darkness all around the curvy river so that the river just pops. So that is a quick reverse engineering on some of Hobby's photos. And these are all techniques that you can use. They work so, so well. And you can do this with your wildlife photos, your macro photos, flower photos. Paint in light for the areas that you want the viewer to see, and paint in darkness for the other areas that you don't want the viewer to see. Now, you've heard me talking so much about creating a photo composition this week that is just the one thing. And compositions that contain just one subject without any distractions are definitely the most powerful photos. But there's an important exception to the one thing rule, and I'm going to show it to you. So last night I went for a walk with Leah, and we were walking through a small forest near home, and I looked down and I noticed there was all this green ground cover all over the place. And what caught my eye was the consistency of the ground cover. So I pulled out my cell phone and I took this photo last night. This is the actual photo. It is completely untouched in Lightroom. And it's maybe a little on the bright side right in the middle and maybe a little too hot on the greens, but that's okay. It's just the principle. And this type of a composition is called a reoccurring pattern. And these compositions only work when there's a consistency in the repeating pattern. So like if there had been a hole or a big gap in the middle of this pattern and that you could look right down into the dark ground, it wouldn't look nearly as good. But because the pattern is so consistent right across the entire frame, it works really well. And this would look great as a picture that could be printed and framed in an area of the house like a hallway or a bathroom, especially any room where there's already a green color tone as part of the interior decor. This would look so good in that type of a setting. So what do you think about this principle of reoccurring patterns? Do you like it? Is it something that you look for in your photography? Please drop something in the chat so we can keep this chat alive. So here's another example of reoccurring patterns. This was taken by Dan Peach. He is the owner of vastphotos.com, and vastphotos.com sells the highest resolution photos in the world. And this is a high resolution panorama photo. It's actually 344 megapixels. And compare that with my top of the line Nikon camera, which is only 47 megapixels. This is incredibly high resolution. You could probably print this 16 feet wide and it would still look great. So Dan shot this photo in the Botanical Gardens of New York City, where he lives. And notice the consistency of the reoccurring patterns. He specifically chose a composition where there were no missing gaps between the leaves. You don't see any areas of the ground. It's just that consistent pattern and the same color tone right across the whole image. And speaking of color tones, this is a good takeaway. When we reverse engineer this image, take note of the fact that there is just one color tone for the whole image, which is like a pale green. And that's the same as my cell phone photo I just showed you. So many of our photos can become too busy and cluttered because there are too many colors in the image. But photos like this only have one color and they often look amazing. Here's one more example of a reoccurring pattern. I shot this in the sand dunes of Death Valley National Park in California. And if you reverse engineer this photo, you notice the pattern is completely consistent from the right to the left. There's no disruption in the pattern that catches your eye. And therefore, there are no distractions in the photo. And this is what makes a successful reoccurring pattern photo. As well, there's just one color, which is kind of a rusty orange brown, which is another reason why this photo works so well. So to summarize, I'd say the majority of the best landscape and wildlife photos are, and macro photos are compositions with only one thing in them. But reoccurring patterns are the exception. And I encourage you to look for them everywhere you go and take at least one photo every single day with your cell phone, because the more you do that, especially as you're looking for the best composition and really taking care and concentrating on finding a clean, uncluttered composition, the more you do that, the better and better you're going to get. And your photos are going to look better and better. So I've talked a lot about the paintbrush in Lightroom and how important it is for your photo editing. So would you like to see right now how I edit one of my landscape photos? because I would just love to show you. So I'm just going to share my screen and get Lightroom going here. So I've got my photo open in Adobe Lightroom. Now let me just say something before I even start about Adobe Lightroom, why I use it. I have no relationship with the Adobe company. I'm not making money off Adobe in any way. I just find that it's the easiest to use and it's the easiest to teach other people how to use it. There are many programs out there and many of them are good, but this one is the most powerful. It's the easiest to use. It costs me $10 a month, and you can choose to use it if you wish. It works great for probably millions of photographers around the world. So the first thing I'm doing on this image is I'm not touching it. I'm sitting back in my chair and I'm asking myself, what's the one thing? What is the hero of this story? What is my goal of the post-processing going to be? What element of this image do I want to kind of highlight? Like, what do I want the viewer to look at? And clearly, we have one hero in the story. It's the waterfall. And I would say that the green moss on the walls of this canyon are also really helping to tell this story. So I want to really bring out the green in the moss. So let's try and do that. So first we need to make some quick global adjustments. And what I mean by that is a global adjustment. It's an adjustment that goes right across the whole image, like brightening the whole thing. That's a global adjustment. So I am going to darken the photo a little bit just because I want to bring back some light with my paintbrush. So my baseline, my starting point is to darken the image, and then I'll shine a light on specific places. So we've darkened it now, and I'm also going to turn down a slider that is called the highlights. And what this does, anything that is already bright, it's going to slightly reduce that brightness. Clearly the waterfall is super bright and maybe too bright. So let's turn down the highlights all the way. And no, I want my main subject to be brighter than that. The waterfall is too dark. So let's kind of go to a happy medium, kind of right in there. I like that. Now I want to bring in some light in the shadows. And there's a slider here called shadows. And I'm going to open up the shadows all the way. And now I see a little bit more detail. And there's just one more thing I need to do on this screen, and it's called setting the white point and setting the black point. And what I look at before I set the white point is this part right over here, this thing here, this thing that looks like a little mountain. This is called the histogram. The right side of the histogram represents the brightest parts in the picture. So the histogram is telling me that the brightest point, which would obviously be the waterfall, is almost at the right side. And I don't want this histogram to move past the right side, which would mean that my highlights are overexposed. So I'm going to turn up the whites. And I'm looking at that histogram and I'm bringing the histogram just to the edge and it's done. And now I have another slider called the black tones, and I want to make an adjustment on the black tones so there's just kind of the right amount of contrast. And we're done. So the basic editing on the photo is done, and there's just this second piece to it now. I want to shine a spotlight on this part of the wall over here and this part of the wall over here, and I also want the green in that moss to really come out. So I'm going to use this tool, which is called the brush. And the brush is like a painter uses a paintbrush. Right now my brush is very small and I can turn the wheel on my mouse and make it really big. So I'm going to make it about an average medium size right there. And to start with, I'm not even brushing in anything. I'm actually going to show you what I'm brushing by clicking this little check mark here. And I'll brush in red just so you can see where I'm brushing. Of course, this will not be the finished result. This is just kind of a guide so that you know exactly where you are brushing. So this is the area where I want to shine the light on, and probably across the bottom here too. I just want that water to be a little brighter. So now I know what I've brushed. So I will turn off that red paint, and now this is where the magic happens. So now that we know we've brushed on the right and the left, I can turn up the exposure. Like I'm literally shining a light on those walls, and that's total overkill, but right around here looks natural. And so I have enough light, but I'm not yet happy with the color of that light. I want more green. And this slider here is called Tint, and Tint controls kind of the green tones and the magenta tones in your image overall. So I want to slide the Tint slider to the left, which has the effect of applying kind of more green tones to what I just painted on. And my temperature, let's just see what happens if we make the temperature warmer. Yuck, I don't like that. If we make the temperature really too cold, yuck, I don't like that either. But somewhere in the middle is looking nice. So I'll click done, and now my brush has been put away. And now once again, because I'm practically finished here, I sit back and I ask myself, is there anything that I would like to either brighten or darken? Is there anything that's causing clutter or distraction? And I'm finding this area here is maybe a little bit bright. It's kind of pulling my eye over to it. So why don't we just paint in a little bit of darkness in that bottom right corner? So I just clicked on the brush, and I'm going to darken the exposure on my brush quite a bit just to start with, and then we'll come back to it in a second. But I'll just darken right there. And I think I'll darken right across the whole front, like so. And let's just adjust and kind of see where we want. I just want it dark enough so that my eye is not being pulled over to it. And I would call that done. So last but not least, I want to just take a quick experimentation on the overall tint slider and see if I can make it just a little greener, and if I like it a little greener, or if it's kind of over the top. And yeah, I just slid the tint slider to the left a little bit, and now this is really nice and green. I like it. I like it a lot, and I think I'm ready to call it done. We could darken in up at the top here to make this moodier and darken in here. Let's just do that really quick. One more brush, and I'll just brush across the top right there, and then brush across the top up here and kind of down there a little bit. It's pretty bright. There's some sunlight up there too. We don't want that sunlight. So now I can darken this brush a little, and there we go. One final brush. I can't stop editing because I love it. I'm just going to see if I can really try and remove some of that sunlight up there. Yeah, there we go. It's almost not visible now. So click done. And let's take a look at the before on this image and see what we think. I'm going to reset it right back to its original. There it is. And let's put it back to the edit that we made. And I'm liking that a lot. It's nice and moody. It's not overcooked. It's not over edited. I'll reset it one more time. That's the before. And this is the after. So easy to do. And what I love to do with my own photos is this painting with light, using the brush to selectively add light in one part of the image or add darkness in another part of the image. So, did you like that? I'd like to know what you think of the final edit. Is it a good edit? And was that kind of revealing? Do you kind of get this thing about the brush? That it's all about making edits by painting in light in some places that you want the viewer to see, and painting in darkness in other areas you don't want the viewer to see. So I have a surprise for you. I am going to be tomorrow live on day 5 of the summit. I'm going to be editing your photos. So this is something that I know that you're really going to like. I'll go through photos very quickly, like one after another, show the before, after, and then just move on. And you'll hear my thought process of how I make decisions on what it is that I'm going to do. So if you would like to submit one of your photos for me to edit live on day 5 of the summit, all you need to do, there's a Dropbox link inside the Facebook Photography Academy Facebook group. And if you click at the top of the feed, there's a tab that says announcements. Look for the graphic that looks like this right now, the one that says Summit, I will edit your photos. So Photography Academy group, the announcements tab, and it's right there. There's a Dropbox link. I have 2 rules. Rule number 1, you'll only submit 1 photo. Please stick to this. 1 photo, 1 thing only. One ping only. And the second rule, it needs to be a raw file, not a JPEG. And the reason for that is that I can get so much more color and light information out of raw photos, and I can't do it with JPEG photos. So this brings me now to camera settings. And this is kind of the big thing that photographers struggle with, because you'll find yourself out in the field and wondering how you should be setting up your camera. So I have a little story for you, and it goes back to 2016. So I took a trip to the Rocky Mountains for landscape photography, and on one night back in 2016 on that Rockies trip, I stayed up late to photograph the dark sky and the Milky Way. And I got up early the next morning to photograph the sunrise, and it was a fantastic sunrise. I was excited to see how my photos looked after that shoot. So I uploaded my images onto the computer that afternoon. But when I looked at my photos on the computer, I was so upset with myself because I realized I had made the most rookie of all mistakes. My mistake was that I had not readjusted my camera settings after my dark sky Milky Way photo shoot the previous night. And that meant that all my photos from that next morning's photo shoot were unusable. And I was so upset with myself for making such a dumb mistake. So the next day I hiked up this mountain with this photo that you see right here. I wanted to take a pano image of the Columbia ice field. And as I hiked up that mountain, I started thinking back to all the times that I had messed up a photo shoot and made a critical error with my camera settings. And I started to realize that it wasn't a one-time event. It had actually happened many, many times over the years where I essentially screwed up my camera settings and then lost all my photos because of it. So it was there and then that I decided that I needed my own system that would prevent me from making mistakes with my camera settings in the future. Think of pilots. Pilots always use checklists. And I wanted to make my own checklist to make sure I was following the right system to use every time I began to make setting changes on my camera. So you remember that astronaut story I told you from yesterday about astronaut Chris Hadfield, who uses a one-pager to solve all his problems in one breath? So that's what I wanted to create right that day when I was hiking up that mountain. And this is the exact spot where I thought up my one-pager, and I created an acronym that I call Firebase. And I'm going to share with you Firebase right now so that you can use it to help you set your camera the right way every time and to avoid making frustrating mistakes. So welcome to the Firebase acronym. I love this simple system, and it will help you avoid mistakes with your camera settings. So the F stands for focus. And do you remember there were only two goals with your camera settings? The first goal is to have a photo that's sharp and it doesn't have any motion blur. And it's also sharp with no focus blur. So focus blur is different from motion blur. All right, you got to keep them separated. Focus blur is caused by an incorrect focus point. Imagine that you're taking a picture of your friend who's standing in front of you smiling while you say cheese. And your friend is standing in front of a mountain view. If your camera moves the focus point away from your friend and onto the mountain, then you're going to have a photo with focus blur on your friend's face, and that's going to make your friend very, very sad. So if you want to keep your friend happy, you need your camera to move the focus point onto your friend's face so it will be sharp and in focus without focus blur. So the first step when you're using this Firebase acronym is to make sure the focus point is actually focusing on the right place in your scene. So I always ask myself, is my focus point set to the right location? And also, do you want autofocus or do you want manual focus? And this is a big one because maybe the last time you used your camera, you were using manual focus. Like, for example, my story I just told you where I was up the night before photographing the Milky Way. And when I went to use my camera the next morning, my camera was still in manual focus mode, but it needed to be in autofocus mode. So F on Firebase is check your focus. Is it in manual? Is it in auto? Which one do you want? And are you focusing on the right place? Then we come to I. The I stands for ISO. You need to check your camera to see what the ISO is actually at. Because once again, you may have been using your camera the last time to be taking nighttime photos, and your ISO may be incredibly high, which means that your daytime photos will be grainy and noisy and not usable. So is your ISO at its lowest setting to avoid noise, or do you need your ISO to be a little higher so that it lets in more light to your camera? The main thing here is just Take control of the ISO and know what it's set at. I have ruined so many photos because I forgot to check what the ISO was set at. Next one is R for raw. If you're taking outdoor photos of any kind, macro, wildlife, landscape, anything, you want to be shooting in raw mode. But when you buy your camera and you take it out of the box for the first time, it will be set at the factory so that your camera is taking photos in JPEG files. And that's fine for quick snapshots. But if you want to get serious about your photography and you really want to take stunning photos, then you need to change that setting. Make sure you're in RAW. When you shoot in RAW, your photos will have so much more light information, and you can do so much more with the photo and with your post-processing. And specifically, you can change the color temperature, and you cannot do that with a JPEG photo. So you need to check this. Is your camera set to RAW instead of JPEG? Like, take control of your camera. Now, the E is for EV. And this is a little button. It has a little plus and a minus symbol on it. And it's known as exposure compensation, exposure compensation. But it is such a powerful little button. And it's so easy to use once you get to know it. I'd like you to think of this little EV button like the knob on your toaster in your kitchen. Like, have you ever put some slices of bread into your toaster and then you press the toast button, you pull down on the slider, and then your toast pops up, but it's not cooked enough. It's still bread. It hasn't become toast. And you go, oh, darn it, I wanted toastier toast. So what is it that you do in that case? You rotate the little knob on your toaster and it kind of lengthens the amount of time that the cooking will take place for. So this is how you actually get toast, right? And it's how you make an adjustment. And this is exactly how your camera's EV button works. So after you take a photo, you need to review the photo that you just took on the back of your camera. In other words, you look at the photo you just took, and then you determine, is it too bright? And if it's too bright, you need to rotate that dial on your toaster down a little bit. So that's the EV button. And just go to a -1, and then take the photo a second time. And likewise, the opposite. If your photo is coming out too dark after you review it, just rotate to a +1 and then take it again. So this will achieve for you the second goal of camera settings. Remember, there's two goals. The first one was to have a sharp photo. The second one is to have a correctly exposed photo, like that you won't have highlights that are overexposed, that are too bright. And you do this with this EV button. You rotate the knob on your toaster so that your toast comes out just the way you like it. Crispy a little bit, but not too much. So the takeaway here is take control of the EV. The B stands for bracketing. And I use bracketing to help me take HDR photos. I like taking HDR photos, but the biggest mistake I can make is that I forget to turn bracketing off. And so I get to the next photo shoot and this setting is still on. So the big thing with the B is just check, is your bracketing turned off or is it on if you actually want it? So I always need to check this. You may wish to use bracketing if you're taking a photo where you have a really, really bright sky and a really, really dark foreground, like a canyon, a sunset over a canyon. And this is where you can use bracketing, but I don't have time to get into that right now. So take control. Is bracketing on or off? A is for aperture. This is the big one. And this is the first setting that I check when I'm about to take a photo. I'll make a decision on what aperture I want to use based on how much of the scene I want to be sharp. So if you're taking that picture of your friend who's smiling at you in front of the mountain scene, and you want your friend's face to be sharp, but you want the mountain behind to be blurry, then you are going to want to select an aperture number, which is also referred to as an f-stop number, that is the lowest one on your lens. So like, for example, f2.8. But if you want your friend's face to be sharp and you also want the mountain behind your friend to be sharp, then you want a high f-stop number, like f9, for example. So you need to just ask yourself, take control, look at what your aperture is and ask yourself, how much do I want to be sharp from the foreground to the background? And then make an adjustment on your aperture based on that. The main thing here is take control. Don't let your camera make that decision for you. The S is for shutter speed. And remember, our our first of the two goals of camera settings, which is to get a sharp photo, right? That's goal number one, get a sharp photo. And remember that getting a sharp photo is split into two. There's two pieces to getting a sharp photo. And shutter speed that we're looking at now relates to one of those pieces, and it's called motion blur. So remember, on day 2 of this summit, I gave you a simple formula for the minimum shutter speed to use when you're hand holding your camera. And that simple formula is to double the focus length. So for example, focal length. So if you were using a 200 millimeter lens, so you're zoomed in at 200 millimeters, which is a lot of zoom, you would double that number and you'll come out at 400. And then now you know what your minimum shutter speed should be, 1/400th of a second. So this shutter speed will help you avoid motion blur caused by the camera shake in your hands, or if you're photographing things that are moving, like moving cars, moving people, moving animals, you need to even maybe adjust your shutter speed up from there. The big takeaway is be aware of your shutter speed. Know, absolutely know, how fast should it be, and take control. So now we're at E, we're at the last letter of Firebase, and it's excruciating. It's the word excruciating. You absolutely need to pay excruciatingly attention to detail. You must do this, because if you're not paying attention to every little detail and every little letter of this acronym, then you're going to make those mistakes. They're painful, they're frustrating, and they have made me want to give up so many times on my photography. And the worst thing is that often you don't discover that you've made a mistake until you get home from your photo shoot, and by then it's too late. So are you paying excruciating attention to detail? Check and triple check every setting. And this entire process will become automatic for you. It'll become like a muscle memory, and it'll become easy. But easy is what your goal is. And that's why using a system like this little acronym, this is your one pager, right? The astronaut wanted a one pager. I wanted a one pager. I created it, and now you can use it. One more thing about the acronym. I kind of stuck one final letter onto the end, and it's review. So after you take each photo, are you reviewing it? Are you reviewing it to make sure it's correctly exposed, and maybe you need to make an adjustment on that EV button I told you about? And are you reviewing it to make sure your photos are sharp, zooming in on the photo and looking closely? So does this make sense to you? Do you think you can use this little system that I've just showed you? It's been I don't want to say life-changing for me, but it's really turned my photography around, and it's made things so much easier with my photography. Tell me if this makes sense for you. So we're coming to almost to the end of the hour, and my goal is to be completely finished today at the end of the hour. So I'm going to see if I can be completely finished within 7 minutes. We're going to give away some gear, including that backpack over on the right, which is pretty awesome. Now, I received a number of emails yesterday asking questions about the new Adventure Photography Ultimate Bundle that I released for the very first time yesterday. So I'm just going to answer about 4 questions, and then we will move on to the draw. So yesterday, it was the very first time I introduced a brand new program called the Adventure Photography Ultimate Bundle. And the biggest component of the bundle is the 4 weeks of live coaching with me. And the one question that we received over email over and over was about the coaching program, when it takes place, and kind of what is it. So it's a 4-week live training program. We meet live every week in a Zoom meeting, and where we can converse back and forth on audio and video during the Zoom meeting. And I created the 4 sessions over 4 weeks, and I'll get to the schedule in a second. And each session is specifically designed around one of the 4 most common frustration points that photographers have. So the first week is all about camera settings, how to capture birds in flight, photograph landscapes, etc. In week 2, it's essential camera gear, like, hey, what camera should I be using? Should I be using a mirrorless? Should I be using an SLR? Do I need a full frame camera? Is it worth it to upgrade? What about those lenses? Like, what's the best lens to use for landscape? So it's just gear, and talking about what you need and what you don't need. And hopefully this will save you a lot of money, because a lot of people end up spending thousands on gear. Week 3 is Lightroom and computer essentials. And I started the beginning on this one, like how to get the photos out of your camera onto your computer, how to organize your photos on your computer, how to get Lightroom going efficiently, how to export. If you want to export your photos for Instagram or for Facebook or for printing, it's all that type of stuff. Overcoming the frustrations of Lightroom and making things easy. Week 4 is how to create your own voice through photo editing, painting with light, using the brush, all these things that I've shown you so far, how to put that spotlight on the main subject and darken all the other stuff. So regarding the schedule, I'm adding a second day to the live coaching program. So you will have your choice between either getting your coaching on a Tuesday or on a Thursday to best fit in with your schedule. The live coaching happens at 1 p.m. New York time. So it'll be on Tuesdays or Thursdays. You'll choose one. And if you want to, you could show up on a Tuesday one week and a Thursday the next week. That's up to you, but just one or the other. Don't show up on both days on the same week. The other question is, how long does it go for? It goes for as long as you have questions. I keep teaching and answering questions until you don't have any more questions, of course, within reason. So the next question is that people have been asking me, Tim, you're talking about specializing in one thing. So then why does this whole bundle come with so many different genres of outdoor photography? So that's a great question. I'd love to answer that. So the bundle comes with a wildlife photography program taught by David Hemmings. It also comes with his 85-page ebook. You also get the sunset photography masterclass with Wendy Klein, the floral macro photography masterclass with Tim DeHaan, the master panorama photography with Chris Collicott, and fine art macro photography with Annette Unheim. So these are concise courses. They're all just about an hour long each, so that you can consume them in one sitting. And this bundle, to answer the question, it gives you options, and it will help you find your one thing so that you can determine exactly what you want to get good at. The bundle gives you the tools to excel in 5 different genres of photography. So it gives you more options, and you are able to see what inspires you the most, because you may want to change direction. It just gives you more options. And the most common question that I've been receiving is that some people are confused and thinking that they already have some of the products included in the new bundle. And I can assure you that every single product in the new bundle is brand new and released yesterday for the very first time, with the exception of this one course that is on your screen right now. Another question that's coming up is regarding the replay videos on the 5-day summit, this video right now. And the replay videos are going to be taken off the internet when the summit is over, but the full-length recordings of the summit are included with the Ultimate Bundle. You'll get permanent access to them. People are also asking about the full-length interviews of the summit speakers. Like, what's that all about, the full-length interview? So each summit speaker was interviewed for about 20 minutes, but due to time constraints during the summit, we cut those interviews down to only about 4 minutes long, which is what you saw during the live summit. But you'll get the full-length interviews included with the summit bundle, and you'll get lifetime access to them. A lot of questions about this one, Lightroom for beginners, like, what is this and do I have this already? No, you don't have this already. It's a brand new course. It's 1 hour long, and it contains all the answers to beginner level problems regarding Lightroom and your computer. And the last one is this post-processing the fast way. Now, this one is new. 5.5 hours long of me nonstop editing other people's photos, one after another. And I spend maybe an average of 5 minutes, 6 minutes per photo. I talk through the process of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's kind of like what I'm going to be doing tomorrow live in front of you. So the entire bundle has a value of just over $6,000, and we are offering this bundle for $497, or 3 payments of $197. There's a link in the description of the video that you are watching if you would like to start with this and you would like to register. The program begins on June the 8th, Tuesday, June the 8th. I do not anticipate that I will be offering this 4-week coaching program again, at least not in this year. So if you want to get coaching from me, then this is your time. We will be closing the doors on this program as soon as the summit is over, because then the coaching program begins, and the course has already been onboarded and it will already be going. The response to the program has been amazing. That's why I added the second day on Thursday. So now you have those 2 days, Tuesday and Thursday. And of course, you'll get the replay video uploaded to your course library right after all the live coaching. So if by some chance you can't make either Tuesday or Thursday, the replay video is uploaded. So if you want to get serious about taking incredible photos and really move your photography to the next level, nothing works as well as coaching. Video courses on their own cannot compare with actually interacting with an instructor. And that's why the most help I can possibly give you is live coaching. And that's why this program has 4 weeks of live coaching with me, which is absolutely the most valuable component in the program. So we are ready for our challenge. Now, remember that you need to complete the challenge component of this summit. If you make a decision, but you don't follow through with at least some kind of immediate action, then the decision won't have any meaning for you. This is the immediate action step that you need to take now. So number one is to identify the 2 goals of camera settings. So make a post and ask yourself, I've told you probably 20 times in the past couple days, what are the 2 goals of camera settings? Let's see if you remember them. And number 2, what will you need to do to make sure that your next photo is sharp? So by memory, let's see what your responses are. And I'm looking forward to reading some of those responses tomorrow. We are ready for our draw. So next slide, who is ready for this? I know I certainly am. I actually love giving away stuff. It's kind of fun to be kind of a Santa Claus. Now, there's one thing I have to tell you before we do this draw, and that is an email issue. I'm going to make this go full screen. Now, there have been many people who have posted online, I've been sending emails to support at Tim's Photos and they haven't been getting back to me. And I'm getting an email back that says, email renovation. Okay, please hear this. You have been sending an email to the wrong address. You've been sending an email to a guy who owns another similar email address that doesn't have the S on the end. There are 2 S's in the word Tim's Photos. Okay, so please spell it correctly. I got an email back from the guy who owns Tim's Photo, and he is not happy with the volume of email that he has received of people who are demanding their prizes from him, and he has no idea why. So please spell it correctly. support@timsphotos.com with 2 S's. If you are a winner today and I read out your name, you will need to send an email to support@timsphotos.com with a subject line of winner. So let's give away a Manfrotto mini tripod. This is the Pixie tabletop Manfrotto mini tripod. I'm just going to get my camera going again. And I have a chat in front of me. I see that right now we have 1,259 people who are live on the line. And I have in one chat, the combined chat of YouTube and the Tim's Photos Facebook page, as well as the Photography Academy Facebook group. And let's get going. We're 3 minutes over time. So the first Manfrotto mini tripod is going to Steve Flanders. Steve Flanders from Arizona. And the second one is going to Kim Shane. Looks like, and this is a Facebook user from Florida. So Steve Flanders and Kim Shane, please send a photo, or sorry, an email to support@timsphotos.com with 2 S's. Please don't forget the 2 S's because the other Tim doesn't want to hear from you, sadly. SD card. Who would like to win an SD card? It's important that you have a high quality SD card. This is a pretty good SD card. It's not top of the line, but it's great. I like to use 128 gigabyte SD cards. I'm going to give away 2 of them right now. And the first one is going to Debbie Stivers from Missouri. Debbie Stivers. That's someone on, Debbie is on YouTube. And from Facebook, drum roll please, Jim Henningfeld from Montana. So congratulations, Debbie and Jim. Can you please send an email to support@timsphotos.com? Subject line, winner, and please send us your shipping address and your phone number, and also a sentence that says what you won. Sometimes we get emails and all it has is just a name and an address, and that's it. Please send full sentences. All right, we are now on the last one, Manfrotto Street Backpack. This is the type of backpack that I really like to have for day trips, and because it just carries a whole bunch of stuff. It's not great for like a big long hiking trip, but it's a really nice backpack. It's the type of thing that I like to use. So the backpack is going to Robert Walker, who is with us on Facebook, and Robert appears to be from Wisconsin. So congratulations, Robert Walker. You have won yourself a really awesome Manfrotto backpack. So send us an email, subject line winner, address and phone number, and a full sentence, please. And last but not least, I'm going to give away a Adventure Photography Ultimate Bundle, and the winner of this is Henry Jelland from Cape Town, South Africa, I'm assuming. Awesome. Henry, congratulations. You're going to be joining me on our coaching program, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you and spending a whole bunch of time with you. So that is it, everybody. I did get it over with in 1 hour and 6 minutes. I was close to the 1 hour. So I am looking forward to tomorrow. And remember, I'm going to be editing your photos live. And again, you can submit your photos inside the Photography Academy Facebook group. Just click on announcements and you'll see the photo that is there. So if you're interested in the Photography Adventure Bundle, there's a link in the description of this video, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you. Please do your challenge. I'm looking forward to seeing your photo or your comments, and I'm going to be posting them tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last day of the challenge. So take the time, go all in, invest in yourself, and learn from me tomorrow. I'm going to have straight content tomorrow. So thanks very much, everybody. Happy shooting, and keep on. I don't know if you've ever noticed what's on my shirt here. It's the motto of Photography Academy: explore, create, and inspire. And that is what we do as photographers. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.